Gee, Alex, good to see you on set.
Great to see you, too.
$2 trillion day. I thought search was dead. I thought ChatGPT was going to kill Google search. But apparently the market begs to differ.
Definitely hasn't yet. I mean, there's everybody worried about the future for Google, but the present always looked good. And the present looks real good for Google. I mean, it has re-acceleration in terms of revenue growth. It issued a dividend. It has a big stock buyback. Sundar Pichai is taking a hard line against people making trouble inside the company, saying, no more. You guys got to get out.
Yeah, it's a workplace. It's a
exactly.
job. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, the narrative around around Alphabet starting to shift. People are starting to say this company remains strong. Those worries might come into play, but they're not happening immediately. And now we're looking at it, $2 trillion.
It truly is. I mean, if you're on the radio, folks, Alphabet, Google is up 10% right now. Just a monster move, like we said, best in almost a decade. Going back, 9.5 years, best day since. It did feel, to your point, without getting into the politics of it, Alex, but it did feel like you see all these things that are happening at the company, and people are like, oh, Gemini's got these weird search results, and it's gotten to whatever. Pichai laying down the hammer. I mean, he's dropping the hammer. It's a place of work. You do work or you go somewhere else. And it feels like that did have a market shift almost.
Definitely. He had to change the story. And I think he understood that. And so what he did was he fired the employees that had taken over. I mean, it's not like they were hanging out in the cafeteria. They were
or outside the building. They literally took over people's offices.
Look, and their job is not to be paid to take over people's offices. You have to do your work. And if you're going to be occupying the cloud CEO's office, you got to go. And I think Sundar realized in the past they had tolerated some of these protests. And now he realized, listen, everybody's looking at us as a laggard, right? They talked about this Gemini issue.
Best days are behind you, Google. Forget about it, right?
And until that was turned around, it was going to be trouble for Google. So today what you have is that narrative is shifting. He's thrown the hammer down. He's written a memo to the company saying mission first, where it's too important of a moment to be distracted. And then, by the way, delivering these very impressive results where they beat on everything. Their profit grew by like 30%, 37%. I mean, it's a time where they're supposed to be dead. They're not dead.
Apple. Now, Apple's having a great week. Apple's having, I think, also its best week of the year, but it was very shaky to begin the year. Don't hear a lot about Apple leadership, Apple management. Haven't seen a lot of Tim Cook lately. What are you hearing around Apple?
Well, I think it's going to have a rough quarter. I mean, if you look at yes, I do. If you look at the independent analysis from IDC, for instance, they say iPhone shipments might be down 9.6%, iPhone sales down 9.6%. Samsung might be taking the leadership role. Xiaomi is ascendant, right? These are real problems for Apple. iPhone's syncing. You have Chinese competition.
Down 10%.
Right, they say
that's a huge. That's a monster number. If it's just a report. It's just a report. But IDC's good.
They are. And this has happened before, right? It happened in the aftermath of COVID, mid-COVID. So Apple has dealt with these bumps. But they need some positive momentum, right? We have WWDC coming up in June where they're expected to make AI announcements. And I'm real bullish on those announcements. But the company has to report earnings next week. Its revenue has declined, I think, 4 out of the 5 or 5 out of the last 6 quarters. And they need something positive to tell Wall Street. And I don't know if we're going to get it next week.
Yeah, and you can see the chart there. I mean, the very far right, the bottom right, and that's this week, and that little upturn. But overall, stock is well down from its levels in late January.
Exactly. That might, by the way, end up being a good thing for them next week because we saw it with Tesla, right? Down so much, a little bit of good news, the stock pops after earnings, even though they miss. So Apple, unlike Meta and the others that have had trouble this year, that have had so much a run up this year that they've been unable to sustain the expectations, Apple might be able to sort of weather this one because of what's happened in the stock over the year.